They found her earrings before they found the bodies. Blood on gold hoops, half buried in the sand behind a seedy Miami motel. The air reeked of cordite and cheap perfume. A child watched from a cracked window, silent, unmoving, as two men were dragged out in black bags. That child was 9-year-old Griselda. By sunrise she had vanished. No one knew where she went. No one ever asked why she never cried. Years later, in the back room of a Colombian nightclub, a man whispered, "The little girl from Miami is back." And she didn't just come back. She came back with fire in her veins, a pistol in her purse, and the names of every man who ever underestimated her carved into memory. The first one died with a kiss. The second one died in a nightclub bathroom. The third? She let him live, just long enough to tell the others she was coming. Griselda Blanco wasn't just building an empire. She was avenging a stolen childhood. And her first move? A massacre in Medellín so brutal, they called it the Devil's Baptism. Before she was the Black Widow, she was just a girl named Griselda, born in Cartagena, but raised on blood. Her mother used her to smuggle stolen goods and beat her for every mistake. At 5, Griselda stole her first wallet. By 11, she held a knife to a man's throat. There was no innocence, only survival. Her mother called her useless. The streets called her La Flaca. But the cartel saw something else: ambition, fire, rage. She didn't just want money. She wanted power. The kind that made men kneel. And when she pulled the trigger for the first time, on a street thug who tried to touch her, she didn't flinch. This one, the boss said, isn't afraid to become the monster. They trained her like a ghost. No fingerprints, no names, just whispers and death. She learned to silence screams with pressure points, to cross borders in the folds of shadows. Her passport had 10 aliases before she turned 20. By then, Griselda was fluent in more than just Spanish. She spoke violence like a native tongue. A mule turned boss in training, she didn't ask for permission. She made her own rules. Don't follow her. One Sicario warned. She'll take you straight to hell and leave you there smiling. And still, they followed. Because Griselda made loyalty look like destiny. And betrayal, a death sentence. The first cartel meeting she ever walked into, men laughed. One called her princess. Another patted her on the head. 10 minutes later, she walked out alone. Shoes soaked, smile untouched. No one ever called her princess again. They called her Señora Muerte. The men she didn't kill, she bought. The ones she couldn't buy, she destroyed. Her crew called her La Madrina. And she made sure every street in Medellín knew the name. If a shop owner didn't pay, they disappeared. If a lover lied, he died. If a rival talked, they choked on their own tongue. Griselda wasn't building a network. She was rewriting the laws of fear. By the time the cops caught her name, it was already too late. Miami's streets whispered of La Madrina. Cocaine came in by the kilo, wrapped in holy books, tucked into baby carriages. She baptized the city in white powder and red vengeance. Griselda didn't fear the law. She bribed it, broke it, then buried it. Her face rarely appeared, but her fingerprints were all over every dead rival and every mansion on the water. She didn't walk. She glided like smoke. And when they finally knocked on her door, she opened it smiling. "Took you long enough," she said. Griselda Blanco didn't become a killer because she wanted to. She became one because the world left her no choice. Her earliest memories weren't lullabies or birthday candles. They were sirens, belt buckles, and bruises. Her mother sold liquor by day and bodies by night. Men came and went, all of them violent, most of them drunk. When one tried to climb into Griselda's bed, she didn't scream. She waited. Then she struck. The knife was dull. The blood was warm. That night, something inside her cracked and never healed. "You're cursed," her mother hissed. "No man will love you. No God will save you." But Griselda didn't need God. She had rage. She had cunning. She had survival written into her bones. Her scars weren't shameful, they were her armor. And by 12, she was already planning how to leave every last piece of that life behind. The streets of Medellín don't give second chances. Griselda knew that when she left home. She slept in abandoned buses, ate scraps and stole whatever her hands could carry. But even then she wasn't invisible. A smuggler named Pedro watched her lift a wallet with the precision of a surgeon. He laughed, not because she failed, but because she didn't. "That girl's got hands," he said. Pedro took her in, gave her food, gave her rules, and gave her her first gun. He wasn't kind, but he was useful. She learned how to traffic weapons through rivers, hide cash inside coconuts, and disappear in plain sight. She was the ghost that other ghosts feared. "Never love the streets," Pedro warned. "They'll bury you face down." Griselda didn't respond. She knew better. You don't love the streets, you make them kneel. Pedro wasn't a mentor. He was a test. One day, he beat her for a mistake she didn't make. Split her lip, broke her rib, left her on the floor like garbage. Griselda didn't cry. She waited. 1 week later, Pedro died, strangled with the same belt he used on her. "Self-defense," she told the crew. No one questioned it. They feared her silence more than his rage. From that moment, she wasn't just another girl in the game. She was the one who made the game shake. "She killed her own," someone whispered. No, she killed the man who tried to own her. And in doing so, she inherited his roots, his clients, and his enemies. By 15, Griselda Blanco was running her own crew, and every man who'd ever laid hands on her, dead or disappeared. There was one thing Griselda never expected: love. His name was Alberto Bravo. He was older, sharper, and knew how to move weight like a magician. They met during a deal gone wrong, crouched behind a bullet-riddled truck. He grinned. She rolled her eyes. But together, they became unstoppable. Alberto gave her trust, gave her scale, gave her sons. For a while she believed he might be the answer to everything broken inside her. But even paradise has shadows. He cheated, lied, skimmed money, and worse, he underestimated her. "You're nothing without me," he said once. Griselda didn't argue. She just waited. Because love, for her, was just another form of power. And betrayal? That was always personal. Their marriage was built on bullets and cocaine. Their love was toxic. Their empire? Growing. But Griselda couldn't ignore the whispers. Alberto was siphoning money, sleeping with rivals, making deals she didn't approve. So she invited him to meet. No guards, no crew, just the two of them. A hotel parking lot in Bogota. She wore white. He brought a gun. He never made it out. Shots rang. Blood splattered across the windshield. When the cops arrived, both were gone. Days later, Griselda surfaced in Miami. Alone. Richer. Colder. And when someone asked about Alberto, she simply said, "He was too soft for this world." That was the moment she truly became the queen. Alone. Untouchable. Unforgiving. Miami wasn't ready for Griselda Blanco. She didn't just enter the scene, she rewrote the rules. While other traffickers smuggled bricks, she moved art. Strollers, coffins, mannequins. Her methods were genius and savage. Within months, she owned more coastline than the Navy. Every corner had her eyes. Every cop had her cash. Every rival had a target on their back. "She's flooding the city," DA agents whispered. They were right. Miami glowed white with her product and red with her message: "Cross me, and you die." She didn't flinch when her lieutenants were gunned down. She sent flowers and hitmen. "The queen doesn't beg," her men would say. "She buries." And so she did, one enemy at a time. until the streets forgot how to speak her name without fear. Money changed everything, and everyone. Griselda's mansions filled with marble, silk, and gold crucifixes. Her sons rode in armored limousines. Her enemies disappeared in daylight. But with power came paranoia. She bugged her own phones, hired her own assassins to spy on each other. "Trust no one," she'd say while sipping champagne. Her inner circle shrank as her legend grew. One night she had a dream, a coffin full of cocaine sinking into black water. She woke screaming. "The devil lives here now," she whispered. Her guards thought she meant someone else. But the truth? She was talking about herself. And every mirror she passed reflected the monster she'd become. The violence wasn't strategic anymore. It was personal. One of her top couriers stole a kilo and ran. She sent men after him, but not to retrieve the product. She wanted his head delivered to her doorstep. It arrived in a velvet box. Another rival tried to undercut her price. His family vanished. When he begged for mercy, she made him dig their graves. "You sell my name," she said. "You die with it in your mouth." She wasn't just feared. She was myth. Mothers warned their children, "If you steal, La Madrina will find you." And the streets. They didn't sleep. They screamed. But even queens have cracks. Her son, Ozzy, barely 16, was caught with a kilo and a gun. The arrest made headlines. Griselda paid off the judges, burned the arresting officer's home, and exiled her son to Colombia. "You're not ready," she told him. But it wasn't discipline, it was fear. She knew the world would eat him alive. And worse, that he might become her. Every move she made now was shadowed by the faces of the innocent, mostly her own children. But she couldn't stop. "Not now. I built this from blood," she said. "It can't end in silence." So instead of saving them, she built walls around them. Gold walls. Bulletproof ones. The DA finally launched a task force. Operation Black Widow. Hundreds of agents. Millions in budget. Their target was clear. But Griselda was always 2 steps ahead. Informants disappeared. Undercover agents wound up in trunks. She changed houses every week. Sometimes she dressed as a nun. Sometimes as a nurse. They called her a ghost. But ghosts don't leave bodies. She did. Dozens. And while law enforcement scrambled, Griselda celebrated her birthday with a gold-plated cake and live tigers in cages. "Let them hunt," she laughed. "I was born in blood. I'll die in it too." But even she didn't know. Death was already watching. Griselda always expected betrayal from rivals, but never from blood. Her most trusted lieutenant, Gyro, was like a son to her. Loyal, ruthless, invisible. She gave him keys to vaults, access to routes, even held his daughter at her son's baptism. But power makes shadows hungry. Gyro had been feeding the DEA for months, trading names for immunity. "She's slipping," he told them. Paranoid, distracted. One morning, she caught him watching her with eyes too careful. That was all it took. She followed him to a warehouse. Found him on a call. "I made you," she said, stepping from the dark. Gyro froze. "Then unmake me," he replied, gun trembling. But he never pulled the trigger. Griselda did. Killing Gyro didn't solve the problem. It exposed it. More leaks surfaced. Payments missed. Couriers turned. The DA raids grew surgical. Somehow, they knew her moves before she made them. Griselda tore her mansion apart, searching for bugs. She waterboarded her own accountant. Paranoia became her shadow. She started sleeping with a gun under her pillow and cyanide in a locket. Her sons watched her unravel. "We're safe," they said. But Griselda knew better. Safety was a myth. The walls were closing in, and someone on the inside was turning the lock. It wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestration. Someone was building her downfall piece by piece. And they were almost finished. The call came at 2:17 a.m. A whisper on the line. Miguel flipped. Miguel, her cousin, her blood, her handler in Colombia. He had taken her distribution maps, her banking trails, and walked into a DA safe house. It wasn't just betrayal. It was exposure. Every secret, every shipment, every name, gone. Griselda didn't scream. She didn't speak. She just hung up and stared at the rosary on her dresser. The one Miguel gave her when her third son was born. That night, she burned every photo they'd ever taken. Family, she realized, was just another liability. And in her world, liabilities don't get second chances. They came for her son next. Ozzy, arrested outside a nightclub with 2 armed bodyguards and a duffel bag full of cash. But this time no bribes worked. No judges bent. He was flown to an undisclosed federal facility. Isolated. Interrogated. And then, he talked. The agents didn't believe it at first. Why betray your own mother? One asked. You don't know her, Ozzy whispered. You don't survive her. When Griselda heard, she locked herself in her prayer room for 2 days. No food. No sound. When she emerged, her eyes were dry, her jaw like stone. From now on, she said, I only trust the dead. It wasn't rage anymore. It was prophecy. The twist wasn't that they betrayed her. The twist was that she let them. Every secret she ever shared was bait. Every deal bait. Every shipment marked. She wasn't unraveling. She was baiting the trap. And when it closed, 23 DEA informants disappeared in one night across 4 cities. You thought I was losing? She whispered to a dying agent. I was watching. But even as the bodies dropped, so did her armor. She'd won the battle, but something had shifted. Her eyes no longer sparkled. Her smile didn't reach her soul. She didn't sleep anymore. The queen had become a ghost in her own empire. And ghosts don't fear fire. They welcome it. They tried to erase her. Overnight, every warehouse, every offshore account, every loyal capo, gone. The US and Colombian governments joined hands, backed by rival cartels, former allies, and her own blood. They called it Operation Erasure. But Griselda didn't run. She called every ghost she'd ever made, every widow she'd ever created, and raised them into war. If they want to end me, she said, loading her gun, they'll have to build a second hell. She unleashed a 3-city assault: Miami, Bogota, and Medellín. Safe houses exploded. Judges disappeared. Informants were shot during press conferences. She didn't just retaliate. She rewrote the laws of revenge. But vengeance has a price. Her youngest son, Mateo, was caught in the crossfire during a retaliatory hit in Cartagena. A bullet to the chest. He died in her arms, whispering, Mama, I didn't want this. For the first time in her life, Griselda wept. Not for the empire, not for the war, but for the boy who never asked for her crown. The funeral was private. No guards. No priests. Just her and a shovel under a thunderstorm. She buried him in silence, then lit a cigarette over his grave. I built this for you, she whispered. But I buried you with it. That night, the queen didn't sleep. She planned. She called it the wedding. An ambush dressed as diplomacy. Every major rival was invited under the guise of truce. White tents, violinists, champagne towers. Griselda wore blood red. She kissed cheeks, shook hands, and danced with devils. Then at midnight, the gates locked. The music stopped. And the lights went out. When they came back on, the floor was painted in blood. She left one man alive. The youngest. The weakest. Tell the world, she said, as she slid a blade across his palm. Tell them who owns the silence now. That massacre sealed her legacy. No one would ever call her weak again. Not even God. But the world didn't kneel. It recoiled. The massacre made global headlines. The DEA declared her public enemy. Number 1. The cartels withdrew. Her allies scattered. The streets turned silent, not from respect, but fear. She was no longer a queen. She was a plague. And plagues get contained. Her last loyalists warned her. They're coming. She nodded. Let them. She torched the last of her ledgers, shattered every phone, buried every trace of her fortune. I built this world, she whispered. I'll burn it before they take it. The fire spread through her mansion as sirens wailed in the distance. She didn't run. She watched it all turn to ash. They found her in a church, not hiding, praying. No guards, no gold, just Griselda in silence. The arrest was quiet. She didn't resist, didn't speak. As they led her out in cuffs, she looked back at the altar. I gave them heaven, she said, but they chose hell. Her trial was a circus, testimonies, betrayals, old ghosts risen from graves. But Griselda never flinched. Not once. When the judge asked if she had any final words, she smiled. Only the dead regret. The courtroom froze. That was her crown, her final shot. And as she was led away, the reporters said it felt like watching history turn to stone. Prison didn't break Griselda. It clarified her. No guards spoke her name aloud. Inmates avoided her gaze. She never asked for protection. She was the protection. They gave her a cell alone, not for her safety, but theirs. She planted roses in plastic cups, prayed every morning, laughed to herself during thunderstorms. But even inside, her empire leaked into the world. She smuggled orders through ink-stained Bibles, bribed guards with jewelry made from toothpaste and wire. You can cage the body, she said, but the crown moves without me. And it did. Her name still triggered blood on the streets. Her silence screamed louder than any gunshot. Years passed. Faces changed. Cartels rose and fell. But her name, it lingered like a curse. In Medellín, an entire generation feared bedtime stories that ended with her knock. In Miami, retired agents still paused when someone mentioned La Madrina. But Griselda no longer ruled. She watched the world forget her, slowly, cruelly. Her sons stopped writing. Her allies died. Her enemies were replaced by ghosts she no longer recognized. Power had a short memory. Legacy didn't. Her name etched itself in whispers, in scars, in cautionary tales. She taught us one thing, a young trafficker once said. There's no such thing as mercy, only memory. Then came the pardon. Technicalities. Legal pressure. Time served. Just like that, the gates opened. No fanfare. No press. Griselda walked out alone. Older, thinner, quieter. She had no mansion. No soldiers. Just an apartment, and a name that still made bullets fly. Her eyes had dulled, but not her instincts. She shopped at corner stores, took taxis, smiled at no one. She didn't try to reclaim the throne. She didn't have to. The world still bowed when she entered a room, even if it was just a laundromat. She wasn't building anything anymore. She was waiting. For what? Even she didn't know. Maybe redemption. Maybe the final bullet. She started going to church again. Not for forgiveness, she never believed in that, but for silence. The priest never asked her name. The choir never sang too loudly. She sat in the same pew every Sunday, unmoving, except for the way her fingers tapped the wooden bench. Always counting. Counting enemies. Counting losses. Counting days. One evening, after service, a boy approached her. Are you her? She looked at him and smiled. Do I look like her? The boy paused. No. She was scary. Griselda chuckled. Good. He never asked again. That was the last time she laughed in public. The church never saw her again. Years later, they found her body on the sidewalk outside a butcher shop. 2 shots to the head. No witnesses. No cameras. No suspects. Just a pool of blood and a purse with no ID. The coroner labeled her Jane Doe for 5 hours. When her fingerprints came back, one agent whispered, "You're kidding." But no one was surprised. Some said it was a rival from decades ago. Some said it was one of her own sons. Others claimed it was divine justice. But those who truly knew her said one thing. She chose that ending. Walked into it. No guards. No armor. Just Griselda, face to the sky, finally ready to be forgotten. Her funeral was unmarked. No procession. No priest. A plain wooden box, lowered into unblessed ground by 2 silent gravediggers. No family. No flowers. Just 3 federal agents in unmarked cars, watching from a hill. The media barely blinked. A footnote. A name whispered in documentaries. She was too dangerous for hell, one agent muttered. But the streets remembered. That night in Medellín, candles appeared on street corners. Old men nodded to her photo in bars. In Miami, a mural of her face, half saint, half skeleton, reappeared on a crumbling wall. The world buried her. But legends don't rot. They ferment. In a prison upstate, a retired assassin named Elias still draws her face on the walls. "She taught me fear," he said. "She also taught me how to be a god." In Miami, one of her grandsons now runs a vape shop by the marina. Quiet, clean, polite. But he still counts exits in every room. In Bogotá, a teenage girl caught selling heroin whispered her name during intake. "Who is she to you?" the officer asked. The girl smiled. "She's my ghost." Because that's what Griselda became. Not a blueprint, not a memory. A presence. Unseen but felt. A silence that warns. Every empire has a mother. They tried to fictionalize her. Movies. Podcasts. Books. But none could match the truth. They softened her. Made her tragic. Made her digestible. But Griselda wasn't a fable. She was a storm wrapped in perfume and pearls. She didn't rise for justice or revenge. She rose because the world left her no choice. Because her silence was never an absence. It was a warning. You want to understand her. An old reporter once said, "Go look at a loaded gun. Then ask yourself why it's never the weapon that gets blamed." That's Griselda. Never the villain. Never the victim. Just the trigger. In the end, her real empire wasn't made of cocaine or cash. It was made of fear. It outlived her body. Outran her bullets. Her empire exists wherever someone chooses power over peace, vengeance over forgiveness. You'll see her in a mother hiding a knife in a lunchbox. In a boy who learns to shoot before he learns to write. In a prayer whispered not to God, but to her. She was more than a queen. She was proof that you don't need permission to be remembered. You just need to leave a scar. Griselda didn't ask for your forgiveness. She demanded your memory. Somewhere in a forgotten room, a phone rings. No one answers. The line goes dead. A woman's voice once said, "There's no retirement plan for ghosts." And she was right. Griselda Blanco never retired. She vanished. Into silence. Into myth. Into the trembling breath, before someone makes a terrible choice. Her story doesn't end in a courtroom. It ends in the split second where fear and power meet, and someone remembers her name. That's the legacy she left. Not in ink. Not in gold. But in the nightmares of those who think they're untouchable. Because somewhere, somehow, La Madrina still waits. Smiling.